So now we're building the skirting. I already did the other side lengthwise, but I wanted to show you how I do this. Now what I did was I left the top on. I measured from the skirting on the top to the bottom, came up with 14 3/4 inches. My skirting is cut 2.5 inches wide. So what I did was I set my table for 2.5 inches. I cut both strips at their width. And then I measured the 14 3/4 inch long boards and I cut them there. So basically what I did was, and let me get a little closer to show you, is I ran some glue on this side. I've already pre-sanded both of these edges and the flat side. I drove a couple of nails in right here, which isn't necessary if you're using pneumatic nailers. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this up with the edge like this. Make sure that you're flush with the bottom. Go ahead and tap in your bottom one first. But make sure you're flush with that other side, because your other side on these ends are going to lap over the skirting on the two front sides. Looks like I might have to drive a few more nails into this one because this board's a little crooked. No big deal. Alright, so we're going to do the same for this one. Line it up on the edges. Make sure you're flush at the bottom. Flush it up over here on the side. Don't beat on your nails too hard because you don't want to leave a divot in the wood. With it being pine, it's so soft. This stuff, it will. Okay, so from now, what I did was I measured from this point on the edge to this point of the skirting on the two sides. Came out with 29.5 inches. So I cut my board down 29.5 inches as I did on the other side, and all I had to do was trim it down to the 2.5 inch width. So what I did here too, I put my glue, and this time I put in 5 nails going across. So what you want to do is put your board in, make sure you're flush with the bottom. Tap in your side. Come down here, flush up with the bottom. that's what it looks like. Now we got to do the two other sides. To do the sides, I figured out that one side is about an 1/8 difference, probably because of the warping of the standard boards I used. So this side right here was 14 7/8, and that side over there was 14 3/4. Now when you prep your boards and you sand them on the back side, you might want to mark which board is which. That way there, it just makes it a little easier for you whenever you're getting ready to install the next piece of your skirting. Now you want to overlap, and I'll come back to you on the video here in a little while to show you how I did this so you understand. Because later on too, you're going to find out that when you take the top off, some of these edges quite aren't too flush. So you might want to fill them in if you got just a little bit of a gap right there. And, or you don't have to. I mean, it depends really on how rustic you want to make it. But you might want to sand them down at least a little bit so there's no edges there that you can get caught on. Like I said before, to get to the bottom, you measure from this point to this point. Okay, so now to show you what I was talking about, I completed this end, and that side is obviously completed too. Now, what I did was, as you can see here, is that these end pieces overlap this piece of the skirting, just to kind of give it a good trimmed look, and it butts up with the ends of your box. It looks really nice. So I got one more side to do, and then we're going to set some nails, and I'll show you the last sanding process, and then from there what we're going to do is we're going to get the box ready for stain. Okay, so what I did to get it prepped and ready is I did my final sanding. I did another 180, cover it up, you know, go over it, get it nice and smooth. Then I buzzed it down with a 400, smooth it out a little bit more, just knocking down some of them fibers. Now, the problem with working with white pine is it does not like to take stain very well. It's very sporadic, very blotchy, and oftentimes very difficult to stain. Now, what I'm going to be using is a Minwax pre-stain. I'm going to brush it on, kind of heavy, and then afterwards I'm going to wipe it down real good. And what that does is it kind of seals some of the very open grain so it's not so dark, and it kind of helps you get a more even finished tone. Now, what I'm going to do here with this box is I'm going to go with a Minwax stain called Special Walnut. It's not dark, but it's got a nice rich brown color, not so much black. So I'll show you the next step on how to put on the sealer, and then we'll go right into the stain. Okay, so right here is what I'm using. Basically what you want to do is just dip your brush in and brush this stuff on. You don't have to worry about going too heavy with it or anything like that. Just brush it on. Make sure you get everything coated. Because the thing is that if you don't get it coated, you could have a very light or dark spot that you didn't want on your project. So this stuff is a little temperamental, but you want to avoid this whole step. Don't do what I did and don't use pine. Buy yourself some nice maple, mahogany, some oak, and build your box out of that. So what I'm doing now is I'm just drying this up. You don't have to uber dry it or anything like that. Just wipe it down. Get a lot of the heavy oily excess off. Wipe it down real good. Because if you do this, you're going to thank me later. Especially, like I said, if you're using pine. So, I'm going to finish sealing this box up, and I'll get right back to you and show you the staining process. Earlier, I wanted to cover doing the box, but my phone decided that the battery was going to say no way. So, I decided to pick up the staining process right here on the top. So I'm going to get the camera moved a little bit closer so I can give you guys a little bit better view of what's going on. Okay, so we're going to keep this as simple as possible. I already applied the sealer. You wait about 5 minutes minimum, 15 tops, after brushing it on to wipe it off with a clean cloth. And then you take your brush and dip it into your stain and apply your stain. Now it's going to come out looking a lot darker. It's going to be a lot heavier. That's okay, because it's only going to allow so much stain to penetrate the surface of this wood. Once it's already penetrated, it won't get any darker by letting it sit on there right now. And we will be wiping off the excess stain, but you're going to do this to the whole project. You're going to wipe this whole thing down. You don't need to put a ton on the brush, just enough to kiss it with a little bit of stain. Now take your rag, this one obviously I was using on the box earlier, but you want to wipe this down. All your extra stain should come right off. And what you're going to do too later on, once you're done wiping down the entire top, and it's the same for the box, is I have some of those biodegradable Blue Shop rags, and I just use that to get the rest of the excess oil up from the stain. So that's basically how I stain the top and the box on this project. Okay, so now that we've gotten the top done, you want, like I said, take a clean, paper towel, Blue Shop rag, or even another clean rag, and just give it a wipe down. Okay, so now I have already taken the time to spray this with poly. I did 2 coats, and it turned out beautiful. Now in between coats, I used some steel wool. It's about 4,000 grit sandpaper after the steel wool to kind of clean up the edges a little bit, just to smoothen it out a little bit. You'll notice that you still feel a little bit of texture to it, and that is why I use this Minwax finishing paste. I usually refer to it as wool wax, because typically what I do is I use a piece of steel wool and I kind of rub it in there a little bit and get a generous amount, not a ton, but a generous amount of the wool wax on your steel wool. And then what you're going to do is you're going to rub it with the grain. Well, there you have it. The box is done. Look at that nice glossy top. Beautiful shine. It is gorgeous. I sprayed poly with an HVLP gun. And that is how I wrap this project up.